Okay, Don, you're all set, Don. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the chat. And if you would keep your microphone muted until you have a question. If you have a camera, turn it on and go ahead. Ask your question. If no one's got a question right off, I've got several emails about people having good, strong hives going out the next day and they're basically dead. And what's happened, they sent pictures, and a few of them are just wrapping their hives up. And I think what's happening is causing too much moisture buildup in the hive. So, what I would suggest is have plenty of ventilation, even if you're way up north and it's cold. Uh, a piece of screen wire with a 1 inch hole will give you some ventilation. And if there's too much ventilation, the bees will shut it off or they'll propolize it shut for you. But that's one thing I'm finding. You can probably unmute your microphones yourself if you have a question.
Hold on, and I'll make that. I'll make that happen, Don. Hold on.
Okay.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
Okay, guys, you can ask your questions. I see Kenneth and Tiffany have one. Just go ahead and unmute your microphone, or I'll do it for you. There you go. Kenneth, what's your question?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello. We can hear you.
Yes? Hello?
Yeah,
we can hear you.
We can hear you. It looks like they're breaking up.
Evidently, there's two people must be talking at the same time. If you can't get through, there's a chat window. You can type your question in if you can't get into the chat. But if you're watching YouTube at the same time, you're going to get a bunch of feedback and we'll have problems. So please watch the YouTube airing later. All right, Kenneth, if you want to try again, you can. I think he's having microphone problems.
Yeah, and he's also got a warning that his bandwidth is having problems.
Okay.
So he may be having an internet connection issue. If Kenneth, if you can hear me, go ahead and there's a chat box on the left-hand side at the bottom. There you go. He got it. Go ahead, Don. Read that, and then he can answer it.
I have a question about swarm in September, harvest honey first year, beekeeper. Well, don't feel bad because this past year was a strange year. We had swarms all the way up into November ourselves right here. So it could be the El Nino, it could be just the warm weather, it could be several things. I haven't put my finger on exactly what it is. Evening, Joe. If you have any other questions, you can go ahead and type them in there if you have problems with your microphone. But swarming is not an uncommon thing in September. That's fairly common, but October and November is a little bit more rare.
Hey, Don, the other day when you done that foundation making video, when you was trying to get, everybody was on there and you was trying to get them to ask questions, the link that you sent out was a YouTube video. Nobody could talk to you.
I didn't send the link out. Where did it come from?
It comes from Google Hangouts or Google's On Air.
Well, it might have been posted up onto YouTube. On the video it's up on maybe there's other people that know how to manipulate my channel and they might have posted it up.
Yeah. Okay, but that was the main reason everybody was watching on the YouTube version and they couldn't ask you questions.
Oh. Well, we hope that they can get in and ask their question because that's why we're trying to do these things here. And we was running wax today. You know, we run wax almost every day we get a chance. But what you have a question, on the wax, the procedure or something?
No, I'll just wait and come down. You can train me.
Well, that's good. We got several people coming down. We signed up a couple new students here just in the last week or so. So we're constantly getting new ones in all the time, and so we hope they stay around for a while. Seems like they come in and a lot of them have some background in beekeeping, and they come 4 or 5 times and they think they've learned just about everything, but it takes usually a half a dozen times working with someone to where you can just turn them loose and say, there's the wax mill, because everything has a problem. Either the wax is getting too hot, too cold, you're dropping droplets of water in it. It's always something you have to pay attention to. And the last student I just signed up is from Alabama, and he did real well. And we had one that come over today. He's a fellow from our bee club that we go to, and the first time, he's doing real good. We made probably a 12, 14-inch high stack of foundation today. And that's a good stack when you have a new student and you're starting from scratch. I've had 2 and 3 students in there and maybe get, 4 or 5 inches because they can't get turning that board. It's just a simple way of dipping that board and turning it to get a flat sheet. If you turn it too slow, you get runoff, so it looks like railroad tracks. And if you turn it too fast, it slings the wax off. So it's a matter of just trial and error.
Yeah, on that melting tank you use down there, do you have a thermostat on that, or you just plug it in and out as you need it?
I'm running it direct there. It was built originally with a thermostat in it, but the thermostat doesn't kick off or doesn't let it run high enough. I like to kind of run it by my feel. And that's what I was trying to explain on that video. Without making any changes, running that wax hotter, you can make thinner sheets. And running your dip where you have your water, running that hotter, you can make thinner sheets. So if you run your wax to where it's almost solidifying, you can put that board in there in about a 3-second dip. You've got a good thick sheet. But if you run it about 15 degrees hotter, then you can run about 1/20th of the thickness. Everything is just kind of running it. There's no gadgets on it. If you want a thermostat, one of those electric roasters works fine. The only difference with that is you'd have to make your dipping board oval. And those things have been picked up at the used places like Salvation Army or Goodwill, places like that for $10 to $15. They're not expensive. You can buy a brand new one for the one that was in one of the videos with one of my students bought. That one was $40. And the larger one, which would take about 2 inches or 2.5 inches longer, it was a bigger one, brand new at Walmart, was $60. So that tank that I got just to buy the metal, you couldn't buy it for $60. That was a donation from one of my students that built it and gave it to me.
Yeah, I got all the material gathered up today to build mine, but the thermostats on the hot water heaters only go to 150, and it ain't hot enough.
Right. So that's why I disconnected mine. I think mine went to about 160, 165.
All right, thanks, Don.
If your wax is not hot enough, you're not going to get good results.
Don, looks like Les has got a question.
Welcome, Les. Jump on in there, Les. There you go.
You go ahead and speak. We're ready for your question.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Don, I got a question. If you've got like a hive stand and you got several hives sitting on there, could you talk a little bit about drifting? I talked to a fellow the other day that knew you, and I've noticed that I have drifting, and the two on the outside end up stronger, seems like.
Definitely. That's the problem. A lot of people like to paint all their beehives white, and it looks nice. It's real pretty looking at, but it has no actual purpose. If you was to go out there and sit in front of your beehives on a slightly windy day or a moderate windy day, 7 to 15 mile an hour winds, and watch the bees come in, they kind of float back and forth until they can find the right hive. That is where you're getting the hives on the end. The two hives on each end, one hive on one end, one hive on the other end, always going to get more bees. That's the simple way. If you look at my videos, I alternate my colors. That way, if on a windy day, the bees come in by sight. Then when they get close enough, it goes by smell. So that is, I hope that there helps you. And then I've had people send me emails about you have to have 2 foot, 3 foot between hives. I have stands out there, 5-frame boxes that are 6 inches apart. I have 8-frame hives that run 8 to 10.
Your line is now unmuted.
Does that kind of help you on your question there?
Yes, that helps. I've noticed that my 2 outside ones are stronger. And along with that, I was going to ask you one more thing about bee space. You don't use inner covers.
Right.
But all the hives that you buy, if you don't, you're going to squash bees, right?
What do you mean the hives that you buy, you squash bees? I'm not following you there.
They don't leave as much space for the frame rack on the top.
Or yes, on the frame rest, most commercial places that sell bee supply houses, they use a standard 5/8 deep. So if you put a frame on there, which is going to be 3/8 high, you have a short space there. Now, if you got an inner cover and it's almost flush and you set it on top, there's a high chance you're going to kill a queen when it comes across. Or if you're not using a inner cover and you're just using a regular cover, and it's happened to me in the past, that last second before you put a lid on, that queen might just run across the frame, and if you don't notice it quick enough, you drop that lid down on that box, you kill a queen. That's the main reason I made my hive, my frame rest, a full 3/4. So when the frame sits in there, you've got 3/8 above it. And then down the road, a year or 2 years or even 10 years, if that box gets a little chewed up from pushing your hive tool in there and it gets raggedy looking, you can set it on your table saw and barely skim it. And you can skim that thing at least a half a dozen times because you're just basically just trying to straighten the edge up a little bit. Also, I make my boxes a little bit taller than the standard people do. That gives me a few cuttings on the bottom. And, if you take a standard box that's 9 5/8, and then the bee supply house sells you a insert, which is a metal rabbet that attaches to it. I don't use those, but there's people out there that listen to a lot of craziness out there. They put that in their hive to make it easier to scrape the propolis. Now, the main thing that I found that when you do that is you create a place where the bees can't clean. You get hive beetle larvae up underneath that thing. You get wax moth larvae or eggs under there. And the bees can't clean it. So I try to keep it to where you can manage that box. I mean, everything that I basically put on YouTube is a common sense approach to beekeeping. And you just think it out. A lot of things that I put up there is where I made mistakes and trying to show people where if you do this, you have a little more leeway. You won't make those mistakes. All right. Johnny wants to know about using 1x10s to build boxes. Well, yeah, you can build out of a 1x10, but your standard lumber you buy at a lumber yard is not a 10-inch board. It runs around 9.5 to 9.25. So you'll end up running a little short if you're making deeps out of it. You almost have to buy a 1x12 and then take that little strip that you cut off. If you're running an 8-foot board, you cut it down to 9 7/8. That strip that you cut off of that 12-inch shelving board, which is going to be 11.5 to 11.25, that's just enough to make the band to go around for a telescoping lid. So there's not a lot of waste to it. Myself, when I cut my lumber, I'm cutting a 10.5 or 10 3/4 board to start with on the sawmill. So shrinkage, and then by trimming back down, I still come out with a 9 7/8 high board. I run mine rough rough cut the first time on a table saw at 10 or 10 and 1/8 inches, and then I run the other side at 9 and 7/8. So that way I have a nice deep box. Once it's assembled, then I'll trim it, just a shave it a 64th, just enough to true the box. There's Kenneth. There you go. If you got a question, you can just jump on in there.
Yep,
Hello?
they do. Go ahead. Go ahead, guys.
Can hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Do you have to hold down the push to talk button the whole time you're talking?
I don't know. It depends on how new your computer is. I used to have to sit on the side of the telephone pole and make a telephone call. But I got a mountain phone now.
Okay, well, hopefully this will work. First, I just wanted to say thank you to Jeff for moderating all this, because we tried for months to get on the Hangouts and it was always difficult to log in. And secondly, Don, we appreciate all of the knowledge we've gleaned from watching all of your YouTube videos and just trial and error. But yeah, the comment we had typed about losing our hive was pretty upsetting for first-year beekeeping. And the reason it was so upsetting was they were such a strong hive the entire summer. I mean, they were in and out, bringing pollen and nectar back. We harvested, how many pounds did we at the beginning of September?
Almost 30.
Almost 30 pounds of honey. And then we just now harvested another, how much more did we do?
Almost 16, 17.
About another 16 pounds of honey. So they were cranking along all summer, and then to find them completely gone, no sign of varroa mites, no sign of anything in the hive is just like baffling to us. And so we just have no clue what could have happened.
Well, a new beekeeper, it's very rare that they're going to spot a mite. You'll see what happens, what the mites do to the bees. Usually when you can start to see mites, it's already too late. So you basically have to do a treatment. Now, whereabouts do you live?
We live in Fair Oaks.
In Northern California, Fair Oaks, California,
well,
Sacramento.
you got cold. You're cold right now up there, right?
Yeah, it's been in the 50s.
Okay. Well, don't insulate your hive. Make sure your hive stand is at least knee high. Don't use screen bottom boards. If you do, you're going to have to seal them off, and then first thing in the springtime, get rid of them and go to a solid bottom board. Now, do you have screen bottoms, or are you using a regular standard solid bottom? You must have knocked your...
Yeah, we have the screen bottom board.
All right. I don't recommend screen bottom boards because they cause more problems. If you have them open, you're going to get moisture in there. And I don't know if you've listened to videos that I put out before, but if you walk on your grass first thing in the morning and you look at your feet, they're going to be soaking wet. When the sun hits that moisture will go up into your hive. Now you create a moisture and a fungal problem. And then, people are going to say they put that little insert in there. The minute you do that, the mites and the varroa, your small hive beetles start to increase because the bees can't keep that section clean. That's why a solid bottom is important to have. I would change that first thing in the spring as soon as you get a chance.
And we noticed that after we checked our hive and disassembled it, we only seen one queen cell in there, and that was it.
If you've seen a queen cell in there, more than likely your hive has already done swarmed on you. Are you running 8-frame stuff, or are you running 10-frame stuff?
Frame, all mediums.
10-frame, all mediums.
Okay. When did you start out with a nuke, or did you start out with a package?
We started out with the package.
All right. A package where you're at, you should have made a minimum of 3 gallons of honey. And an average for that size hive, you should be making between 3 quarts to about 12 to 15 quarts. I have hives here, to 8-frame hives that are making from a gallon to up to 5 gallons. on 1 or 2 pulls. Now, Joe is up in the north up there, and he has a little bit higher average. But you have to maintain your hive as far as your varroa. And if you don't want to use anything in it, you can actually put sugar syrup on with wintergreen in it or spearmint, something to keep the mites down. And if you don't want to even do that, going to small cell will be a great advantage.
Sorry, we were just trying to remember all the questions we
Well, we on here every week. A thing to do is to make a little list, because I have people. We do podcasts and we do basically we get on around the world, and people. I don't know if it just makes them nervous or not. We have the problem right here. A lot of times people are dying to get in here, and then they get tongue-tied when they get here. So it's best to kind of get a little bit of a list of what you want to ask, and don't be ashamed or bashful. If you don't ask it, you're not going to know it. And sometimes it's a simple thing.
Exactly. And we usually always have a lot of questions. We're actually pretty excited about taking the first year beekeeping class through our local beekeeping association we belong to. And then there's also a gentleman up in Sonoma County who's doing a free class for all of the beekeeping association members the end of this month. He's come up with a new development that he tried where he's using medium supers, and he's connected 2 frames. So when you're checking it, you're actually pulling out one entire frame, but within 2 medium boxes. So we're kind of curious to see what that setup is. He claims he's had lots of good luck with that experiment. So we're kind of curious to check that out.
Well, the key word there is experiment. And my philosophy is I try to give advice to new beekeepers. Keep everything standard. What he's done there is actually altered the frame, cut the ears off, and he would have been a whole lot better off to run deeps than mediums. Now, that's a whole new can of worms right there. There's people going to say, do nothing but mediums. You have to figure out what your goal is. If you want to sell bees, you're going to sell mediums to people that have bad backs, or maybe women that can't lift much weight, handicapped people. I have handicapped people that work all mediums in 5-frame boxes, but they're in a wheelchair, so weight and bulkiness makes a difference. But 10-frame versus 8-frame, I've run 10-frame when I started out many years ago. I got rid of it over 40 years ago. I had to prove to myself what works and what don't work. And when I run 8-frame alongside 10-frame, 8-frame outproduced 10-frame 2-to-1. Second, it's easier to work. Third, it doesn't swarm as much. It's more like natural. Now, a lot of times people get misled to buy 10-frame stuff. 10-frame, all mediums, for a woman to lift up is pretty heavy. You're looking at 65, 85 pounds. And if you've been in first year beekeeping or 10 years beekeeping, the outside frames on a 10-frame box hardly ever get drawn out. The only way to get drawn out is you have to reverse the outside, put them to the inside, and move some out. Then you could get them to draw it. But it's just not natural to go that wide. I would say go with mediums and deeps, because down the road, you might want to sell some splits off your box. You can sell mediums, you can sell deeps, but if you want to try to make a little side business of it, more people want deeps, but they still run mediums too. It's something to think about now before you get. And as far as your 10-frame box, and if you decide to go to 8-frame, don't try to cut it down, butcher it up, and make 8 frames out of it. Just, if you're going to use it, get a router, cut a 1/4-inch slot down the center on the inside, put you a piece of paneling on it, put a piece of plywood on the bottom, make a solid bottom, drill a hole in the front on one side, a hole on the back side on the other side, Now you have 2 5-frame nukes. You have to keep in mind a beehive, if it's healthy, it's storing honey and it's multiplying. If you're not in there every 14 days, you're losing honey or you're losing bees. So that's my advice for new beekeepers. And you work your hive with gloves?
This year we did, just to get into it. We didn't want to get into it and then get discouraged or not want to do it because we got stung too many times. And actually, I was the only one that got stung 2 or 3 times.
You won't get stung unless you're pinching or binding the bees. Now, for women, if they got long hair, I tell them, wear a baseball cap and kind of tie it up in a little bun in the back. But I have this picture that you're looking at right here is an example. That picture was taken by students probably 8 or 10 years ago. And that hive, I set my chin on it and the bees come boiling out of it and I didn't get stung. And one of the professors that was teaching entomology was wearing gloves and a full bee suit. I said, come over and just take your glove and drag it across the top of that frame. They tore him up. The pheromones of that sting pheromone stay in that glove. And it also will set the bees off. Now, you can work your bees without a veil if you go take liquid smoke. Put a couple drops on your hand and rub it all over your face. And, it might not smell good, but the bees won't sting you. Try a little at a time. If you need to wear gloves, do the nitrile or use the latex gloves like you use for washing dishes. I like the thinner ones for, working beehives if you're going to do that. Try that. And once you get used to that, you'd be surprised. The bees, they're not going to be aggressive unless there's something wrong with that hive. Now, you can have a gentle hive and you get a lizard or a gecko or something, a skunk, something around there that's agitating that hive. The bees are going to be more on guard. That's the only reason they're going to get mean.
Yeah, it wasn't so much being afraid of not wanting to wear the gear. We just didn't know what we were doing initially, so we thought, well, we'll just wear some protection. And the times that I got stung was my fault. It was not their fault. The first time I got stung was installing the package, and after we, put them in from the box and set it in front of the hive, and we were sitting under our gazebo watching them, and so being the mother I am, I thought, oh boy, there's still, quite a bit of girls in there. I got to get them in their home for the night, and I went over and tapped the box a little bit more, and I guess one of them came out and said, excuse me, please leave us alone, and she got me on the hand. So yeah, we're comfortable.
Have you watched the videos where I show how to put packages in?
Yes.
Yes, we did watch those. That was helpful.
Those videos right there, I have women coming here. I got new students all the time, and we put packages in without a veil. What you do, you're not going to hurt those bees. You take that package and bump them down just a little bit and spray them with a real light sugar syrup. Pull that can out in your queen cage. And then put the queen cage in between your frames and give them another light spraying of sugar water. And then just turn it upside down and bump it from one side to the other. Tilt that thing. You don't have to get all them bees out. If you've got a handful in there, set the cage down on the ground in front of the opening. The queen is in that hive. The queen is going to call those bees in. But if you try to be so gentle and you try not to hurt the bees, you're not going to spray them. You're going to have more bees in the air than you have in the box. But there's a lot of videos that I put up, and the whole theory of my philosophy is common sense beekeeping. So I try to make it very easy for anybody to do. It's not complicated. You learn by your mistakes, and by joining a bee club, find an older mentor, or getting on chats like this. I mean, there's quite a few chats that's up and running all the time. I was on a New Zealand chat the other day, and they want to do a podcast with me. It's just people, they have different opinions of how to do everything. You got to find out what's going to work for you. You got to turn your mic back on if you're going to talk.
Don, I got a
The
question.
go
Have you
ahead,
ever
Joe.
have you ever tried to winter bees in a mini nuke?
The mini nukes are not good for that because there's not enough volume in there. There's not enough bees to maintain it. Another thing, it's not a good thing to try to overwinter is observation hives. It's almost a lost cause to try to do that. There's just not enough bees to keep it warm. There's not enough bees to bring pollen and just maintain it. Your best bet, if you run an observation hive, when it starts to get cool, put them in a 5-frame box, put them outside.
Well, I thought maybe if I had some queens left over, I'd try to winter them queens. You think you could put maybe a medium honey super on top of that mini nuke?
Well, see, you're getting to the point where once you get to that, I'll talk about a queen bank. Now you can run 300 to 400 queens in a queen bank. That's what a lot of your commercial people do. I don't like to do it. It's got good points. It's got bad points. If you bank up 1,000 queens, 2,000 queens, you're the first one out of the gate in springtime. You got top dollar, but you don't have a good queen. Everything that I'm trying to put out there is a common sense thing. The queen bee has to be laying on a regular basis. That just like when you buy these queen kits, you put that queen in that little cage, she can only lay 100 eggs, and that takes maybe 10 minutes. So if you go back the next day, you've shut the ovaries down for a period of time. And then when you go put her back in again, you start and stop that ovary so many times that it gets a little faulty, don't want to work. Same thing when you bank queens. You bank them in the fall, and the queen is dormant all that time. They feed her, they'll nurture her, but you don't get as good a queen.
Well,
a lot of commercial people don't want to hear that.
Well, I just thought it might be an option if I had, 10 queens left in mini nukes. If I had maybe a
I
honey
would
super.
cage the queens, the mini nukes. You got your medium box, your medium super. There's a bar that goes across the middle. You hang all them mini frames on there, and then you can take one frame and build it up as a little cage to hold all your queen cages. Put 20, 30 cages there. Put them on the top of another hive. But when you do that, you're going to have to run a queen excluder because you don't want that queen coming up there. There's always that possibility that she could kill them other queens. If you're going to use that queen excluder, do not use plastic. The only one that's any good is the one that's a wood-bound one, and it's got the round wiring. But, I'm not totally against queen excluders. I don't run them on for honey production or anything else. They have their place and time to do things. Now, they work good when you have new students and you're shaking bees from one hive to packages, and you're shaking a bunch of packages. You can either shake the bees through queen excluder to make sure it's an insurance policy, you don't lose a queen, or you can reverse it. We do it a lot in South Georgia. We put a double deep there, and we smoke the tar out of them from entrance, and that drives all your young bees through the queen excluder. They come up, and then you just grab a frame as fast as you can shake. You can shake 4 or 5 pounds out of a hive and don't even have to look for the queen because she's at the bottom and she's not going to go through that queen excluder. In a situation like that, the queen excluder is fine. Otherwise, if you're going to have a beehive for honey, take it off and just put extra boxes on.
Well, I built that medium super with divider. I put it on a regular.
Yeah, you put it on a regular 8-frame, right?
And the size I made my frame, I can get 18 in there instead of 16. I only give a 1/4 inch between. Is that enough?
16.
Yes.
Don't push it. Even on an 8-frame hive, there is bee space that you have to maintain. And if you get over what they call violation of the bee space, you're either going to end up building burr comb or you're going to end up killing a queen. The same thing goes with a 10-frame hive. People put 9 frames in, or an 8-frame, you put 7 in. They're made for a reason. And if you build up that burr comb, you pull that frame out, you're going to end up rolling a queen. If you're making your own queens, it's not a big thing. But if you're buying queens, $35, $40 a queen, you can roll them up real quick. And if you're buying breeder stock, you paying $300 and $400 or $500 for a queen. It's not hard to kill it. It'll bring tears to a grown man.
Okay, well, I'll just take it getting them drawed out. I'll not push my luck.
Well, I mean, you're at the beginning here now. Don't try to jump leaps and bounds. You got to take it step by step, and manage what you got, and then you keep expanding out.
All right.
Well, I have a question for you, Don. Can you hear me?
You mean just one tonight?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. I was reading a book. Now, you know how that is, but I'm always looking at other stuff and trying to gather as much information. This guy swears that the only time to catch wild bees, swarming bees, is in the spring. And he's after the spring. The strength of the swarms are so minimal and so almost. It was his point of view. But you don't agree with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, from what I'm hearing, you're breaking up pretty bad, but what you're trying to explain to me is a swarm is stronger at one point in the year, or, well, springtime, you're always going to get swarms. Now, if you're in it for honey production, you're running borderline all the time, swarm. So it's basically management. If you don't put supers on, or you got to checkerboard your frames, give the bees more room to store honey or brood, they're going to swarm. So that's why I keep telling people you need to go from the top hive, the top box, to the bottom board every 14 days. That's why you're watching for queen cells. If you see a queen cell, take that frame and you can either build a queen castle, or if you got regular wood and wax, take a knife, like a little boning knife or a steak knife, and just cut a circle out the size of $50, and take that queen, put her in another box, shake some bees in there, you got another hive. But I've been to bee clubs and people talk some outrageous, stupid things. They'll hold a frame up with 20 cells on there, and they'll say, these are going to be swarm cells, and just take your hive tool and scrape them off. And I look at the person like, what the heck's going on here? That's like taking $500 or $1,000 and taking your lighter and see if it'll burn. I mean, what the bees are doing, something natural, take advantage of it. And when they're starting to make queen cells, there's something going on. You're either overpopulated or you're honey bound. You don't have enough supers on there. And a simple thing, just by putting an additional super on, sometimes you can prevent that. But the strength, as far as swarms, fall or winter, summer or spring, they're going to range anywhere on the size of your hive to I've seen them as much as 8 and 10 pounds. And just because your hive swarmed one day doesn't mean it's not going to swarm again. They call those after swarms. I've seen hives swarm about every 6 days, and they'll throw out 3 to 5 pounds of bees each time. And that's where people come and call. They say, my hive's got wax moths in it. And that's what's happened is the hive is swarmed. The queen never made it back to the hive, or maybe 2 queens come back to the hive and they battled it out and both got killed. And they couldn't reproduce, so the population dropped. The second thing happened is you've got wax moth buildup in there because of a weak hive. Wax moth is only a symptom of a lazy beekeeper or someone who's not watching the hive. It's not a disease. Kenneth, your microphone is off. Can't hear you. I think he's having audio problems too. Did you get your audio fixed, Jeff? Because you're breaking up.
Yeah, I have a new laptop that I wanted to use tonight, but because of that party, I couldn't get to it. But I'm getting rid of this rig and getting another one, so
It's working fine
hopefully I
now.
won't break up.
Now it's working fine. You've threatened the computer. Now it's working.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna get replaced, so now suddenly it's gonna pick it up.
Yep.
And it looks like Kenneth and Tiffany are gonna go to the phone,
Okay.
and try to work from there.
All right. Anybody else got any questions? Don't be bashful. You can ask your questions. All right. Kenneth is back. Got your audio working or your mic?
Don, can you hear me?
I hear you.
When do you start grafting your queens? My area is about the same as yours as far as temperature wise.
Well, you got to have certain things before you can graft. I watch for pollen coming in. That's the first good indicator. Then the next thing is you got to have warm enough weather, because you could graft and have 100% all the time, but if your temperature drops too low, the bees are going to start to cluster, and if they cluster, they pull off the cells, so your cells are going to chill and they're not going to be any good. But how many hives do you have that you're going to get into grafting?
I'm just going to try one hive. I already got 4 hives, but I'm
Well,
going to pull out of my strongest hive.
I don't want to throw no water on your party, but there's no point in grafting when you got that many hives. If you just feed them real good or let them get a little bit crowded, each hive will make 40 to 50 queen cells, and you can pick out the best ones.
Okay.
You know, grafting, it's not what people think. It's not the magic bullet. Grafting is basically to take one genetic, one color of bee, one race of bee, and reproduce it, clone it to 1,000 to 100,000 fold. If you cut cells from a hive that they made themselves, you have far superior queens. I prefer that method. I only teach what I have to teach. And unless you're going to run 100 to 200 queens a day, you're wasting your time. Because by the time you set up one hive just as a starter a cell builder, and then sit there and graft for a while and put them in there, and maybe you get them and maybe you don't, you already took one hive out of production, because they're not going to do more than one thing when you're doing that.
Okay.
Your best bet is let them get crowded and cut cells. That is the best way. You could not build boxes fast enough if you do it that method.
I got 40 something built now and about 500 frames.
Okay, well, I mean, each hive, if you got a standard hive, each hive could have as many as 10, 15 cells per frame. And springtime, when you got a good buildup, or if you're feeding them and you got weather that's, appropriate, you could have a possibility of 50 to 75 queen cells per box. So to go through 40 boxes is like, an hour's work out there. For every hive you've got, I suggest you have 2 to 4 nukes ready, just to prevent your swarming or to transfer your bees in. And now if you got, if you're running 100 nuke boxes, and if you're going to run mini nukes, you could run 500 mini nukes with that.
I built some queen castles, but mine are 3 frames and a 10 frame box, but I got it divided for 3 frames in each castle.
It's okay. You can do it. It's basically like an 8 frame divided with 2 frames in each side. You just have an extra frame there. It's not going to hurt nothing. You're probably going to gain at least another week, because when that queen comes back, those 3 frames will be filled up quick. Usually within the first queen comes back, within the first 3 days, you'll have 1.5 frames full of eggs. So you still got to have enough room, to have honey, pollen in there.
Okay. This past week they were bringing in pollen. I don't know where they're getting it, but they were bringing it in.
Where are you at?
about 70 miles south of Memphis on I-55.
Oh, well, I seen some pollen coming in here about 4 days ago. There's dandelions blooming now, and there's a couple other little there's some kind of a moss that's growing down along the riverbanks, and then we've seen a few pieces of that clover, that white clover, but we've had a downpour of rain here this last few days, so we have dandelions all the way up into December and January.
Okay. I'll let
If you
somebody else talk.
if you got pollen coming in right now where you're at, you don't need to get in that hive and mess it up. The pollen's telling you they got a queen in there and they're laying. That's the one indication you look at.
Right. When I seen the pollen coming in, I said I'm gonna wait another 2 or 3 weeks before I go in there.
Well, there's no point in going in there because right now, if, on a small number of hives, you could do more damage than you're going to do good. There, just go out there and lift the back of the hive up. If it's heavy, you got enough honey in there. Look at the entrance. One thing to look at in the wintertime is watch the entrance. It's normal this time of the year to see a little bit of cuttings of wax along the edge on the entrance by the entrance reducer. That tells you you got bees in there. They're uncapping some of the honey. They're eating, and then watch for bees. If you see bees going in and out, they're doing what they have to. If they have to get outside and go, they're going. If they're not coming out and they're just crawling real slow, then you might have a problem there. I don't suggest going in something unless you have a reason to go in there, because if you damage that queen, you might lose a hive.
Okay. I'll just wait then. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Don,
Kenneth, if
run
you got a
mouse.
question, go ahead. You can talk.
Don, do you run mouse guards in the wintertime?
I used to run mouse guards. I don't even bother it anymore. I keep my hives up high enough; they're knee high. Uh, you don't normally get mice in there. If the hive has any strength at all, I would say an 8 frame hive. If you had 4 frames of bees right now, you're not going to have a mouse in there. A 10 frame hive, if you're covering 5, 6 frames, you're not going to get a mouse in there. That they're very guarding because they can smell that mouse just like they smell a bear, and they start putting out that alarm odor, and they come tearing out there.
Okay, well, Kenneth and Tiffany had a question, so if you guys want to unmute yourselves and go ahead. We can't hear you yet, guys. Try again. There you go.
I'm not hearing them.
Yeah, you'd better just go ahead and type it if you can, guys. Type it into the chat. And it looks like they're having audio issues just like I'm having audio issues tonight. So go ahead, guys. Try it. Go ahead, guys. Try it out.
No, ain't hearing nothing. If you've got a auxiliary microphone there, you might have that half unplugged.
The other thing I'd like to tell you guys, go to where it says more with the dot lines. It brings up your audio options. If you've got more than one microphone in there, you can sometimes choose the wrong one. So go over to more with the 3 dotted lines, go down to your audio option, and make sure that you have the microphone switched to the right one. Yeah, they're having some troubles, it looks like.
I know it. I've had problems when I've got on Google and it's like you want to reach out there and you want to start to strangle somebody.
Oh, I know. I know. This is still more of an art than it is a science, let me tell you.
Yeah. Bryant Davis has got his hand up. If he unmutes his mic, we could probably hear him. If he's got a question. And Jamie's in here. He might have a question.
Jamie, do you have a question? Or Bryant? Go ahead, Bryant.
I asked him a question a while ago. I didn't know how to undo my hand over there.
Okay, that's fair enough. How about Jamie? Jamie, have you got a question?
Jamie's one of my commercial students, and he might be tired. I wore him out the other day making foundation.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. Kenneth and Tiffany are using that iPhone. They may need to cut their video off where it's showing their face and actually just do the audio only, because when I tried using my iPad, I couldn't do the video of me talking to you at the same time. I had to do audio only for the video. Did you hear that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Did
I
you
know
hear
Tiffany probably didn't hear you.
I'm not a lip reader, but I think they can hear us, but we can't hear them. Nod your head. Okay, yeah, that's what it is. They can hear us, we can't hear them.
If they can log back out and whenever it pulls up, they'll see you guys on the screen. But whenever they go to talk, if they won't do the video of themselves on the camera, just use a microphone only, we should be able to hear them. It's different on the iPad. It looks different, and you have different, the stuff is in different places on the iPad, on the app, whenever you use the app.
Well, that's but here's their question. They want to know if, or Don, if you have any last questions on installing a second package this spring and to split that.
Well, you can split a package usually within 14 to 16 days. If you got a little practice, if you got an existing hive now, you could probably split it probably in 8 to 10 days, just by taking a frame of brood from an existing hive, putting it in your new hive or your new nuke box, and shaking the package in that. Now, if you really want to get real tricky and be real cost efficient, you leave the cork in both ends of your queen cage. And when you shake that packaging on top of one frame from another hive, you've got eggs of all ages in there. You keep the cork in that queen cage and go back in about 6 days. The bees they'll figure out the queen can't get out, so they'll start making queen cells. And the queen that's in the cage can't get out to damage them. So when you get the queen cells to the point where they're almost sealed, you take that frame out and you stick it in another nuke box and then pull the cork out and direct release your queen. I mean, that's just other tricks that I used. I've got so many little tricks that I do that it's hard to take a new beekeeper and start talking advanced stuff. And I explained to many of my students, people come here their first time and they want to learn queen grafting. And I try to explain to them, it's like you come here and you don't know how to ride a tricycle, but now you want me to teach you to ride a high performance motorcycle. You've got to work yourself up step by step. Now, once you get, Joe has experimented around now. I can walk Joe into where he could take his hives and go tenfold right away just by little tricks that I've done over the years. Most people won't share those things because, number one, they want to sell you more bees. So the more mistakes you make, the more bees they can sell you. I want you to be successful. I want you to talk about that old man down there showed me a few things.
You know, speaking of that, the old man down there, you were telling me the other day that you had over 1 million hits on some of your videos, right?
I looked at my last count on it. I'm running 4,200,000 or 230,000 on YouTube. And somebody had sent me a thing on Facebook, and they said, you know, if everybody sent you $1, you'd be a wealthy man. And I replied back to them, I'd be glad if they sent me 10 cents. I'd still be wealthy enough. But I do put enough information out there. If it helps people, you know, it's good. At least they have something that they can compare one beekeeper to another. And I try to put my theme out as being common sense. So if you can't reason it out, more than likely they're trying to sell you something or there's some kind of gimmick involved. Nothing is hard about beekeeping other than it's hard work. It's not rocket science.
So Kenneth and Tiffany, look up the video on oxalic acid. So type in Fat Bee Man oxalic acid. He's got this vaporizer that may have been your problem, from what Don was saying. You got mites and you didn't even know it. You know, it's like Don said, if the bees find something wrong, they don't like something, and there's a hollow tree somewhere, well, you know, off they go, and that's kind of what happened to you guys. So you might want to try that. Also, look up his videos on wintergreen and spearmint. Don, is that it?
Right.
Yeah, those are going to be helpful for you, just based on. I am no expert, but I have one of those memories that works on. It gets triggered on certain words and things, and that might help you out. And check those out, and then of course you can come back next week. Yeah, there you go. There you go. I've got essential oils like that too. Yeah, I've
Now,
actually
when you
got one right
buy
here,
essential
frankincense. I was
oils,
putting on.
all right, one thing about essential oils, when you buy essential oils, there's two types. There's a steamed version, and then there's a synthetic one. And the synthetic one is basically for aromatherapy. It's not going to do your bees no good. And if you stop and think about oils, wintergreen back in the Civil War, wintergreen was used in hospitals as a sterilization method to sterilize hospitals. But it's so easy, it's so common sense, no one thinks about it. You put wintergreen in your sugar water and the bees feed that to the larva, the mites do not want to reproduce. I mean, that's one simple thing right there, and it's not costing you nothing. And you know, the next thing is all this chemical dumping it in the hive is not good. And the colleges that practice more organic beekeeping, what they're trying to tell you is put drone comb in your hive because the mites like to reproduce in the larger cell. So what they're telling you, in one hand, mites prefer a large cell. And then they turn right around on the other side of their mouth and say, small cell bee and some small cell foundation doesn't work. I wish they'd make their mind up.
Well, I think Don has proved that small cell bees and small cell foundation does work, especially when it comes to varroa mites, or what's the throat mite that gets in their esophagus, Don? Yeah, trachea.
Tracheomite is, you know, on beehives, tracheomite several years back used to kill a lot of hives. It doesn't kill as many, and it's kind of selective. But when you take the small cell bee, and what you've done is took a bee and basically made it about half size. Now, the trachea is reduced by half. That trachea mite that was getting in killing beehives has stayed the same. So the college has basically proved that it cannot get in there. So I actually stopped treating for trachea mites way back in 90, 91. And there's no point in treating for it. And the only real treatment is menthol. You put menthol in a hive, and years ago, the big blast out there was menthol patties with sugar patties. Put menthol in that, and that's supposed to kill them for the trachea mites. But they didn't tell you by putting the shortening in there, that was an attractant for small hive beetles. So it's like today's medicine. They prescribe you one medicine, they prescribe you two more to counteract what they first give you. So I basically don't use any of those things that people say. I try to keep it simple. But I thought, I would mention about the essence of oils. If you're going to keep bees, basically, tea tree oil is going to substitute your antibiotics. Any of your tylosin, terramycin. Tea tree oil is an antifungal, antibacterial. I feed that in my sugar water in the spring and again in the fall. I don't have that yellow streak, and it's diarrhea of the bees. They're coming out and they're pooping all over the hive. Or if they get bad enough, it's inside and it starts to stink. That's one indication you can actually watch it, see it on your hive. Now, that is very cheap. You take a pack of terramycin or tylosin, and you're looking at about $12 to $15. For $15, you could buy enough tea tree to treat 1,000 hives. So the drug companies, a lot of them don't like the stuff that I put out there because it's common sense and it's very cheap. It's the same thing with oxalic acid. Checkmate, they sell you a pack of Checkmate, which is basically a nerve gas that was used during the Second World War. And it kills mites. It also contaminates wax. And for $8 or $10 or $15 a pack, you could put mineral oil in a hive. That's very benign. It won't hurt the hive. It'll kill mites. It's a slow suffocation. But your essence of oil, like spearmint and wintergreen, it's a lot faster kill. Your oxalic acid, if you're vaporizing a hive and that hive dies, it only died from starvation. It didn't die from mites.
Right. My point about the trachea mite was, though, that it's like if you have small bees, it's like trying to swallow a baseball. The mite won't fit. It just won't
Right.
fit. So you break the reproductive cycle is a good thing there. Okay, guys. Well, it's what, 9:05, 9:10, something like that. There, your time, Don. Are there any last questions? Yep, one more. They want to know how to store their frames, Don, since all the bees up and left.
I personally do not store frames, whether they're brood frames. People tell you to put them in a freezer, freeze them. It freezes the wax moth and whatever. Even on a honey super, in the fall, I extract my honey. I pull the honey out of the super. I don't save them. I cut every bit of that wax out and I start with new foundation every spring. Now, if you're going to save your honey supers, you have two options. You put a mothball crystal on there, or you can stagger set them. And if you stagger set them, you crisscross them where the air gets in there. That reduces the amount of wax moth. But they don't tell you if you get a mouse in there and it pees in there or it poops in there, now you're not going to get bees to stay in there. And at the worst, if they don't do that, they chew the wax up. So I found in the long run, the new wax every spring, they actually make more honey. It's a natural process of the bees, just like your fingernails and your hair. It grows on a regular basis. Even when you're dead, it keeps on growing. So the wax platelets that's coming off the abdomen of the bee all the time. And by sitting in front of the hive, just observation. Watch the front. Every so often, you'll see it looks like dandruff coming out. They're shedding wax platelets that they're not using. You don't see it as much early spring because they're chewing the wax and reforming the comb. But you'll see it once you start getting cappings in there when they're capping honey, or June, July, and August. It's excess wax. If you want to harvest it, pull a frame out and drop an empty frame in there with nothing. They'll start building comb, and now you have something tangible you can sell.
To be clear, guys, Don does not throw his wax away. He cuts it all out and then does like the wax video that he put together. Melts it down and makes new foundation with it. And the huge advantage to that, according to Don, he knows exactly where the wax has been.
Right. That's the main reason I redo my own wax and roll it out. Now, if you don't use chemical and you got capping wax and you purify it like I show in my videos, you're looking at $20 to $25 a pound. Northern California, there's a guy right now that's looking for wax, and he's offering $50 a pound for it. Has to be chemical free. Now, another thing is propolis. It's that sticky stuff people don't like. I get $60 a pound for that. Tiffany's running over and getting hers.
I was going to say, Don, I think they ran out to go harvest some propolis.
There you go. That goes to show you they listened to the video. And
yeah,
she's
okay,
got her
guys. Oh, wow.
Yep. That's good.
That's a lot of honey.
That's good. Well, I'm glad people is enjoying the videos and are getting something from it. And I see it's just like a farmer planting his seeds. I see my seeds are growing. Joe has already accomplished so much just his first year. I see Tiffany is already learning stuff. And Jamie, he comes from Alabama over here. And the last time he left, his mind was throbbing, he said.
Okay, guys. Well, we're going to call it a night then.
Okay.
We appreciate all your knowledge and sharing. Thank you, Don, from Kenneth and Tiffany.
Now, if you can't get in, or if you know people that can't get in, be sure to tell them to send an email to Don's Bee+Chat, no apostrophe, and Jeff will get back and send them a link to where they can get in.
Right. That's Don's Bee+Chat at gmail.com. Don't forget the Gmail part.
It's getting late. I know. All right. Appreciate everybody showing up, and we'll see you next week.